Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 58. Rita Point of View. She woke with a start, her chest heaving as she desperately filled her lungs with air. Looking around, she couldn't help but wonder where she was as she sat up. And when she did, she suddenly felt a chill hit her. It was at that moment she realized that she was wearing nothing but a blanket, which she quickly tried to pull back up after it fell to her lap. However, to her surprise, her wings flared out instinctively as they hit the rather sturdy pedestal beside her, which sent her tumbling onto the stone. "Oof," she murmured to herself, her side now aching from the sudden but not particularly painful fall. Though, as she began to consider where she was, she couldn't help but realize something that she had nearly overlooked. Glancing behind her, she noticed her beautiful, bright yellow wings were back, tears welling up as she spread them out before bringing them around her as she hugged herself and quietly sobbed. She never thought that she would see her wings again, since they were chopped off to keep her from running several years ago. This went on for a few quiet minutes. That is, until a voice echoed from her mind, a voice that was definitely not her own. "Hey, glad to see that you're awake. I didn't want to interrupt your moment, but we do need to talk. It took some time to bring you back, but it looks like you're in pristine condition now. Sorry about the no-clothes thing. Yours were burnt to ashes, and I'm afraid I don't have anything that fits you. What with those wings of yours that suddenly sprouted out while I was fixing your body?" The voice was warm, gentle, and apologetic, despite claiming to have already done so much for her. Rita was stunned. Curiously glancing around the room she found herself in before looking behind her and considering the giant green crystal on the pedestal that illuminated the space around her. Her mind raced with questions and doubts as she considered her last memories and where she woke up after that horrible experience. "Am I dead?" was the first question she managed to put voice to, while she absently tied the blanket around her, having it cover most of her front and back. Her feathery left hip and left wing remained exposed as she slowly got to her clawed feet. The voice was quiet for a moment, and she could feel him mulling over the answer before it spoke up again. "Well, you died, but don't worry, you got better," he explained with kindness in a way he conveyed his thoughts. "I want to apologize, but due to the circumstances after bringing you back, my mark replaced the mark that you originally had. All it represents is your bond to me and my manner's influence on you. Oh, and one of your eyes is also green, just so you know." She looked taken aback as she examined herself. Sure enough, a green circle was on her shoulder feathers. However, she didn't feel the same compulsion as before, nor did it have the flames that were sealed in her old mark. In fact, she felt better than ever before, healthier and more robust than she could remember. As she continued to examine herself, she noticed the complete absence of scars and marks that marred her skin ever since she was forced into servitude several years ago. "I see. Do you expect me to serve you then, whoever you are?" While she did feel directly opposed to being in someone's servitude again, it was a little hard to argue with a being that could resurrect her like that, and even give her back her wings, amongst other things. Oh, no. I don't expect anything from you. It was my fault for letting things get as far as they did and allowing you to die so brutally. I just wanted to make up for that by repairing as much as I could. If you have anywhere to go home to, I'll make sure that you have all the money, equipment, and an escort to take you where you need to go," he explained, and she could feel the sincerity in his voice, which confused her already racing mind. She gingerly clutched one of her wings, bringing her closer to her chest, before looking at the giant green gem on the pedestal, having long since sensed that to be the source of the voice in her head. I don't have anywhere to go, now that I think about it. If it's all the same to you, I'd like to stick around, if you'll have me," she said, lowering her head thankfully, before remembering something as she looked back at the gem. "What about Mina, Lansec, and Jazz? Are they still alive?" she asked, cursing herself for allowing herself to feel happy and relaxed, while they were still probably suffering. Oh yes, the others. They're fine. And I put them in separate cells away from Dahlia and Diarosa. My primary focus until now has been you, though, since you were the only one to have died. They're as comfortable as I could manage, with food, drink, and some skins for padding on the floor. But I didn't want to let them roam around, just in case anything triggers those foul marks on them," he explained apologetically, and he sounded uncomfortable about seemingly locking up people that didn't deserve such treatment. Rita sighed before smiling with relief as she sensed these intentions. "Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't quite know what to call you." She felt him feel annoyed, though it seemed more at himself than anyone else. Sorry about that. I am but Mori, and this is my territory. I'm a dungeon core, if that means anything to you," he explained simply. Her eyes widened with surprise, the missing piece of information finally snapping into place as she staggered back before catching herself in a panic. "Sorry about that. I just wasn't expecting you to be a dungeon core. I've certainly never heard of you before, nor have I heard of any resurrecting anyone beyond their own mana beasts." She then looked around, admiring the murals and carvings and what appeared to be a sleeping area of sorts. Though her eyes then landed on what she now knew as the dungeon core, having never seen one in person. She took a moment to compose herself, considering everything now before speaking up. I know how to disassemble the sleep brands. At least, I've seen how they were made, and I should be able to disassemble it in theory," she explained, feeling less confident now that she'd made the offer, rather than feeling more confident by saying it out loud. She could sense Bitmori's impressive mind whirling about with ideas and considerations, before eventually speaking up again. "That's more than I know, so let's get to it. I want to see the idea, and we'll figure out how to implement it," he offered. She could sense the confidence that he had in her, the feeling almost infectious, as she couldn't help but smile in response. After a time, all three of the remaining slaves were led by an absolutely massive splitter wolf with blade strapped to its back. She couldn't help but watch in awe the majestic beast sitting beside the core pedestal, though, as she watched, she was suddenly very aware of even a larger beast emerging from the shadows. The Shadow Prowler, moving over as it preferred to lay on the steps to the pedestal, with the core rather than next to it. The two of them seemed to regard her. She could feel their thoughts too, and they appeared to recognize her as one of their own now. The other remained quiet, though she could see Lanzek was particularly nervous as he watched the Spitter Wolf. "Why are they all silent?" the voice of Bitmori asked, the genuine curiosity and concern plain for her to sense, and she smiled to herself at the innocence in this. "It is because they haven't been given permission to speak, and if they do so without permission, their marks will start to inflict various kinds of pain on them," she explained before looking over at his core again. "You have no idea how relieved I am that you don't know that," she mentioned while smiling properly before looking amongst others and approaching Jazz. "Jazz, could you please lay down and lift your shirt?" The half-orc looked up at her, a new sense of hope glimmering in his gaze before silently nodding, slowly shifting around and laying on his back before lifting his shirt under his own power as he revealed a circular pattern on his stomach that was grey and lined with curses involving stone and petrification. Now these runes I can read," Bitmori mentioned offhandedly. Rita looked over at the core curiously before focusing back on the task as she closed her eyes for a moment and channeled her mana freely for the first time in years. Upon focusing on herself, she was shocked to find that her body seemed not only restored, but even enhanced. Before today, she had only one ring of mana around her mana heart, and the overall control of her own mana had been poor and wasteful. But she now had a second ring form, as well as such fine control over her mana that she was dramatically more confident in what she was about to do. Her feathers poofed momentarily from the sensation of the mana coursing in a way that she hadn't experienced before, though she quietly got a handle on herself as she conjured a needle made of concentrated mana and leaned into Jazz, examining his stomach. Focusing more closely, her eyes began to glimmer as she studied the mana itself within the brand. Slowly, but precisely, she began needling at the endpoint of the string of curses and started gradually undoing them. Jazz shifted at first, the sensation deeply uncomfortable, of course, but not overtly painful. Thankfully, he remained still as the next 15 minutes were whittled away. Finally, once the final curse which formed the outline of the brand was undone, the mark vanished while chunks of stone and earth spilled from his gut. The neutralized mana harmlessly manifesting in a solid form once it was all done. as Rita pulled away. Jazz couldn't help but take a deep, shuddering breath before clearing his throat. "It's gone, isn't it? The mark is finally gone," he asked, speaking freely for the first time in forever, tears welling up in the big man's eyes as he let out another shaky breath and began sitting up while wiping out his eyes. Mina and LanScaper flashed broad smiles as they cheerfully patted the half-orc's back. "I see, you did very well. Glad our idea worked," Vidmore praised almost absently. She could feel his mind was elsewhere for whatever reason. At least he was not entirely focused on her in that moment. She smiled at the praise, even if he wasn't particularly focused on her in that moment, though as they waited in silence, LanScaper shuddered and jumped with surprise. "Whoa, that's cold!" he cried out before clasping his hands over his mouth and looking at the others. He quickly stood as he lifted his shirt and showed them his back as chunks of ice clattered down on the stone. Your mark is gone," Jazz declared excitedly, though jumping up to his feet as he takes the dwarven man by the arms and hopping around excitedly as the women watch. LanScaper whooped with delight, though they stopped soon after as they all turned to look at Mina, who silently smiled politely at their good fortune. That is, until she winces, reaching up to clutch her neck and pulling something away. Her eyes light up with delight as she saw the gold barbed wire that was inscribed into her brand, and smiling as she choked on her words, her furry face getting quickly moist with tears. It's over," she said softly as the four of them collided, hugging each other and holding each other close as they celebrated their newfound collective freedom. "Well, that was easier than I thought, though I suppose I have you to thank for providing me an excellent example." Vidmore spoke up once more after the group's celebration dialed back. The group suddenly remembered that they weren't alone and turned to look at Vidmore's core. Rita stepped forward as she bowed her head to the core, the others bowing as well when Rita stood tall again. "Vidmore, thank you for helping us truly be free once again. Tell me, what can we do for you in return?" The core was silent for a moment, but spoke out soon enough. "Tell me about the hegemony, and what you know about the trafficking between the theocracy and the hegemony." The four of them looked at each other, nodding one after the other, as Rita smiled politely. "Of course, Vidmore. We'll tell you everything we can." End of chapter. There is a new legend on the horizon. Blueberry Cat has taken the T6 Patreon spot. Thank you very much, and I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say that. I would just like to thank our T5 members, Lord Azrekahl, AmbroseKTal, Quantem Wensday, Dragzoon W.R.E, Blueberry Cat, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, and Leslie 517. Thank you very much.